So where were we a year ago? Well, a year ago, our pastor and founder and friend of 34 years had felt that the Lord was leading him to somewhere else. He had an open door, and by the way, we were sad, we were frustrated, we were like, hey, we might want some things changed around the church, but we don't want to lose our pastor. And
so you say you wanted some things changed, but you won't come out and say who is responsible for the bad policies that ruin children's lives in the first place? We'll see a lot of that throughout these clips. Someone is responsible for the trouble that they are now facing, but they will never put any responsibility on him. That's not change, and that's not helping your case.
You know, I had to come to grips. Is it okay for God to bless him and God to bless us? We're trying to figure all this out. And that was a huge adjustment for us.
That's a bizarre question, and why would you even ask questions like that unless you had a guilty conscience?
Our reputation in town had been tarnished due to some, I'll put it this way, horrible actors. I find it interesting when some of that is in the news, as if we would all condone this kind of behavior.
It's kind of unclear who he's talking about, but by horrible actors, do you mean your friends Willen and Beckner? The ones you worked alongside for years that teenagers came to you about? That you confronted allegedly but never told the police? Never talked to any of the girls who you're supposed to be mentoring in your youth group? You not only allowed but created an atmosphere for kids to be abused. And as far as his comment, as if we condone this behavior. But you did. That's why you're in the mess that you're in.
Shame, shame, shame on someone that would take their authority and their power and abuse or do wrong. You don't need me to teach you on that. You know that.
Oh, like you did? Or the man you can't say enough good things about while also clearly contradicting yourself this entire message?
Our finances had become a mess. And some of it wasn't just because of bad management. Some of it, we didn't have the college anymore. We didn't have the numbers in the Christian school. So there were a lot of, let's be honest, there were a lot of factors in there. I didn't check with Adam on this. As to my memory, I think we were around $70,000 worth of debt on top of our mortgage.
John Jenkins, living in an almost $400,000 house in rural northern Michigan, is just one glaring example of how his lifestyle tanked that church. He left it in literal shambles. If you know, you know. And the only reason you're not saying more about it is because you both know the money people sacrificially gave went to pad his wallet and probably yours too. So yes, they have sold some buildings, but it's no coincidence the church is doing better financially now that the family is gone.
And for a while, those fiery darts and let us get strong again. Let us get our, if I could say it, this, not that we were doing anything wrong, but let's get our act together. And so we immediately, as a church, we got busy facing our problems and our situations. We sacrificed, we prayed, we stayed, doing all that we know how to do and have been trained to do to follow Christ. We voted in, even though Pastor put the leadership group together, we brought that before the church, wanted the church to be just as excited about that and have the church's blessing on that. Let me tell you this, the countless hours and discussions on behalf of our church and trying to figure out which way to go. We had a list of things that we needed to deal with. And I just commend the gentlemen for how hard they've worked in the time. We sold the van. We were able to pay off our local debtors, totaling, I think it was in the 4,000s or 5,000s. I think we also put some on a credit card and as well. And then we reached out to our propane company, and we came up with a 12-month plan. We owned it. We owe $24,900. It looked so big at the time. And by the way, it's big right now. But we paid it off in 2 months, folks. We did that. The spirit of our church had changed drastically. Being all the negative news and different things that we were dealing with, there was a spirit of excitement again and fellowship, and man, it was just contagious. And it was during the negotiations and moving forward, word got out before we were ready to tell the church, and it caused an unpleasant evening here on a Sunday night, if you were there. And I've told people this. That's the only bump in the road, if you want to call it, that we've had through this entire changeover. That's pretty good. That was the only little bump that we had. And by the way, we still have a long way to go. Let me just be blunt with you. We have a long way to go restoring a good name and trust in our ministry, in our community, but we're on the right track.
You helped create that bad name, and you won't distance yourself from that bad name. You, Hagland, are the bad name.
Look, when you get negative news from social media and reviews and from any kind of news outlet, it takes some time. But I've watched a church just say, let's do what's right. Let's just do what's right. Look, we cannot deny some of our black marks. They're part of our history.
Kind of strange the way he looks at the crowd when he says this, almost as if he wants them to embrace it, like this made us who we are type thing.
And what's happened, you can't ignore it. But I feel like as a ministry, we've owned things in such a way that will allow God to let us move forward.
He's always trepidatious when it comes to the subject of God's blessings. I think he actually does believe the things that he says in a delusional sort of way, unlike Jenkins, who I think was just outright shady and embraced hurting people. But I think Hagland is trying to have it both ways, convincing himself that he's doing things right going forward and that he was never to blame, but also a little scared that God is mad at him and wants to convince himself that he's still blessable.
Let me tell you something. I'm aware about the individual that was sentenced this week, and I thank God for a judge to offer justice for somebody that deserved it.
You helped create an atmosphere that facilitated Beckner hurting a teenage girl, blatantly ignoring every sign and red flag that these men were throwing up into your face. There are kids that came to you about both physical and sexual abuse, and there is not one police report or record. There were students in the youth group literally changing overnight, becoming withdrawn and hopeless, with these teachers hovering around them like vultures, and you saw it. We all saw it. The difference was that you were an adult with responsibility to step up, and we were helpless children. All of these stories coming out aren't all on Jenkins. He had help. He couldn't have covered up this many stories on his own.
I was walking around this property and I was praying, God, they talk about Ichabod being writ on a ministry. I said, please don't write Ichabod over our ministry. And listen, I prayed, I said, God, I don't want this ministry to thrive and go forward so that we can have a heyday someday and build this and do that. I said, I want a place that will still exalt and glorify and honor you. If you will continue to bless us and let us move forward, we will glorify you and uplift you in this community. I think we've done our part, and we're working on doing our part to do the right things. Background checks, security policies, transparency, I would say that I ain't seen in a long time. With all that said, tonight, let's just take a moment and thank the Lord for what he's done. Examine our hearts. Make sure that there's nothing between you and someone else and you and the Lord. We are the church, the example to the world, and may we be right with God. So tonight, just like Samuel said, consider the great things he hath done for us. I look at the past 12 months and I say, wow. Some of the things that we were dealing with, it was just heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. We've had times in our church when man swinging from the chandeliers and shouting the victory, and then we've had times of great concern and prayer requests and all that. This is one of those times where after all that we had been through, it was a tough time. People in the leadership team know we were trying to make some adjustments, and I'm going to say this and it sounds funny, but it was more real than it was funny. It's like some of these contracts we were in, it's like, did we sign in blood and make a pact with the devil? I'm just telling you, it was crazy. We sat down with 2 different local companies saying, hey, we need to make some adjustments, we need some help, and there was no hope or no help other than, hey, we'll sign you up for another 5-year contract and we'll give you a better deal. It's like, no, you don't understand. We don't want to spend any more money. And so I remember asking one of them, I said, okay, let me ask you a question. What if we had foreclosure and we were bankrupt and we had to shut down? Oh, we have a plan for that. Boy, that rubbed me the wrong way. So you have a plan for us if we fail, but until then, you're going to take everything you can. And we've been loyal customers for 25 years, and we need some help getting through. That was hard to take. But let me tell you something. It wasn't all that way. We had to list and be done. To God be the glory for the people of this church to trust God and to move forward. And there is no room for any of us to have any pride. God will cut that right out from us. It is all the glory goes to Him. Let's never get prideful. God has been very gracious. He has been very...